There comes a moment in a man's life, usually not in his youth, not in the wild rush of ambition or the noise of proving himself, when heaven begins to whisper a truth too deep for the shallow applause of the world. A stillness settles in, not because he's tired, but because he's done striving to be seen. And in that silence, when no one is clapping and no one is watching, something divine starts to happen. Not around him, within him. A man who no longer needs to prove his worth becomes dangerously attractive. Why? Because he has stepped out of the economy of performance. He is no longer bargaining for attention with his charm, muscles, cars, or clever lines. He is no longer renting his identity from other people's validation. Instead, he has become a mirror of eternity, reflecting something unshakable, unbought, and untouched by time. This kind of man doesn't walk in with fireworks. He walks in with weight. And people feel it. His presence says, I have nothing to prove, but everything to offer. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And when a man is aligned with the truth of who he is, when he's done trying to impress and has begun to embody, women can feel it. People can sense it. Heaven bears witness to it. This is not just emotional maturity. It is spiritual authority. Because make no mistake, there is a war in the spirit realm for your identity. The enemy will do everything in his power to keep you hustling for approval, addicted to applause, chasing women who don't respect you and standards that don't reflect you. Because as long as you're trying to be seen, you'll never walk in your true sight. But when you stop performing, when you finally say, I no longer need to be chosen to know that I am called, that's when heaven takes its seat. That's when you become a man people respect without knowing why. That's when your silence becomes louder than other men's shouting, because you're no longer playing by their rules. You're answering to a higher calling. This shift is sacred. It's not always seen on the outside. The world may still label you average. Your mirror may still show you graying at the temples, a little slower in your step, but there's a glory being forged in the unseen places. And those who have eyes to see, they will see it. Because it's not your looks, your status, or even your words that speak loudest. It's your peace, your stillness, your grounded masculinity that refuses to beg for a seat at the table, because you are the table. And make no mistake, women notice this. Not all, but the ones who have the depth to feel it. The ones who are tired of being entertained and ready to be led. They will be drawn not to your youth, but to your depth. Not to your performance, but to your presence. And your presence is no longer for sale. You see, you become attractive the moment you stop trying to be. Because you've entered a different kingdom. You're no longer marketing yourself like a product. You've become a temple. And when you move with that kind of internal conviction, you don't need to seek attention. It seeks you. You don't need to prove you're worthy. You know it because you've walked through fire and still carry the fragrance of faith. That's when women start leaning in. Not because of your cologne, your conversation, or your clothes, but because of something in you they can't quite name. A sacred weight. A holy defiance. A refusal to be shaken by rejection or praise. A man like that is rare. A man like that is remembered. Because a man like that has become a vessel. And if you're hearing this today, it's not by accident. This isn't just relationship advice. It's a wake-up call. You've been invited out of the noise, out of the chase, out of the need to constantly be seen. You've been called into deeper waters. Not to drown, but to be baptized. Into the man you were always meant to be. So take a breath. Stand tall. Let go of the performance. Because the moment you stop trying to prove your worth, you finally reveal it. Would you like this next as a voiceover script for video narration or formatted YouTube caption and title for viral reach? Time humbles the foolish, but refines the wise into kings. And if you are a man who's been walking long enough, you know what that means. You've lived through the crushing seasons, the moments when life didn't just test you. It stripped you. When your strength ran out, your charm failed, your plans collapsed, and you were left with nothing but your breath and your belief. But what you may not realize is that those moments were not meant to destroy you. They were designed to reveal you. You see, youth will lie to you. It will tell you that your power is in how fast you run, how loud you speak, how many people follow your lead. But real kings are not born in crowds. They are forged in caves, in lonely places, in silence. In the long hidden years where no one is clapping, and nothing makes sense. The older man who still walks with wisdom didn't get there because life was easy. He got there because he let suffering shape him instead of shatter him. And that's where the refining happens. Not in the spotlight, but in the fire. Not in applause, but in pressure. Time is the great purifier. It exposes the counterfeit and elevates the authentic. And if you've been walking with your eyes open, you know this: the greatest things in life do not rush. Trees don't grow overnight. Diamonds aren't formed in minutes. Oil doesn't flow without crushing. And kings are not crowned before they are broken. There's a reason your steps have slowed. It's not because you've lost your edge. It's because you've gained your depth. You've learned that not every battle is worth fighting. You've discovered the sacred difference between reaction and response. You've seen enough to know when to walk away, and when to stand so still that even chaos loses its voice around you. You carry something now that youth cannot imitate. Gravitas, weight, holy patience, that rare quiet strength that speaks louder than volume ever could. And let me tell you, people can feel it. They may not compliment you on it. They may not even understand why they trust you, why they listen when you speak, why your presence settles the room. But make no mistake, heaven has marked you. Not because you are loud, but because you are true. And there is a generation, especially among younger women, who are starving for that kind of truth. They don't just want excitement anymore. They want substance. They've danced with boys who knew how to impress but not how to lead. They've been with men who had muscles but no mission, charm but no conviction. And now they're searching, often without knowing it, for a man who's not guessing about who he is. This is where your age becomes your anointing. Not because of the number on your birth certificate, but because of the number of storms you've survived. Because of the tears you've cried that no one saw. Because of the lessons you've learned that textbooks could never teach. And now, without trying to be impressive, you've become irreplaceable. Scripture says that wisdom is more precious than rubies, that long life is in her right hand and riches in her left. That kind of wisdom doesn't shout, it summons. It doesn't need to sell itself because it knows it is the treasure. And if you've allowed time to teach you, if you've yielded to the process instead of fighting it, you are now that treasure. You are not common. You are not washed up. You are not past your prime. You are in your prime. Because your prime is not defined by your energy. It's defined by your essence. So let the world keep chasing fast pleasures. Let them mock your pace, your discipline, your restraint. They don't know what you carry. They don't know what it cost you to become this grounded, this stable, this clear. But those who matter, the ones with spirit enough to see, will honor it. They will follow your lead, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. And if you've doubted your worth, if you've questioned whether your best years are behind you, hear this now, like thunder in your soul: you are not aging. You are ascending. There is something about a man who does not flinch when the world begins to shake, something holy, something rare, something that cannot be faked, no matter how strong the jawline or how charming the smile. Because when the fire breaks out, when emotions run high, when the room fills with tension and hearts start spinning, there are only two kinds of men: those who react and those who anchor. An older man who's been through the storm, who's buried people he loved, fought battles no one saw, endured betrayal without bitterness. He doesn't panic anymore. He doesn't raise his voice just to be heard. He doesn't need to control the chaos around him, because he's already made peace with the one inside him. And that kind of peace, it's magnetic. We live in a time that worships excitement, fast love, fast money, fast validation. The loudest one gets the attention, the wildest one goes viral. But let me tell you something: eternal passion without direction will burn everything down. And too many relationships are collapsing because men are still mistaking adrenaline for authority. But authority isn't loud. Authority is settled. When a woman enters a relationship, whether she knows it or not, she is looking for one question to be answered. Am I safe here? Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. Can she bring her chaos to you without you becoming part of it? Can she melt down without you melting with her? Can you lead her out of her storm without needing to tame it first? And this is where the older man shines. Not because of what he says, but because of what he refuses to say. Not because of how fast he moves, but because of how grounded he remains. He's seen the patterns. He knows that feelings lie. He understands that sometimes silence is the most loving response. Not cold, not passive, wise, like the Christ in the boat, sleeping while the winds screamed. The disciples panicked, but he didn't. Why? Because he had authority over the storm. And men who walk with God learn to carry that same stillness. You see, real masculinity doesn't look like dominance. It looks like discipline. It looks like knowing your strength and refusing to misuse it. It looks like showing restraint when it would be easier to react. And that kind of control, it's not weakness, it's power under submission. It's the kind of power that makes people feel protected, not pressured. But don't mistake calmness for lack of fire. A man of peace is not a man without passion. He is a man whose fire no longer burns out of control. And that fire, when tempered by wisdom, becomes leadership. And leadership, real leadership, is always attractive. Not just romantically, but spiritually. Because people crave order. They crave clarity. They crave a voice that doesn't waver when everything else does. And some of you listening, you've been questioning if you still have something to offer. You've watched the years pass. You've watched the culture obsess over youth. You've wondered if your stillness is mistaken for stiffness, your calm mistaken for lack of fire. But let me tell you what the Spirit is saying: you are not past your prime. You are in it, because your presence is no longer a reaction, it's a response. And responses build legacies. Reactions build regret. The world needs men who don't flinch. Relationships need men who don't crumble. Women need men who don't vanish when things get heavy. And you, if you've allowed time to carve depth in your soul, you are that man. You are not called to match the energy of the room. You are called to set it, to walk in with the quiet confidence of someone who's been tried and tested, to be the lighthouse when the shore disappears, to speak not with panic, but with presence, to carry a stillness that reminds everyone around you we are not lost. There's a way through this. And if no one told you, hear it now. You don't need to be exciting to be irresistible. You need to be immovable. There's a power that comes when a man no longer negotiates his values. When his standards are no longer swayed by attention, no longer edited for comfort, no longer bent for validation. He becomes like stone in a world of shifting sand. Unshakable, immovable, whole. And what most men don't realize is this: your presence becomes a fortress when your values are rooted. Not a favor to be earned, not a prize to be won, but a refuge, one that doesn't move when the winds blow, and doesn't crumble when loneliness knocks. This is not the kind of confidence that can be taught in classrooms or copied from Instagram quotes. This is Spirit-forged clarity. Born in the fire of hard choices, built over years of saying no, when it would have been easier to say yes. It's the result of knowing exactly who you are, and refusing to sell pieces of that identity to fit into rooms you've outgrown. Because here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. If you have to lower your standards to keep someone, you're not in a relationship. You're in a transaction. And God never designed you to be a commodity. You were never meant to be consumed. You were called to cover, to lead, to build. That calling doesn't just demand strength, it demands conviction. Conviction that holds, even when desire screams, even when you're lonely, even when you're misunderstood. And if you're listening to this, something inside you already knows what I mean. You've felt the pressure to compromise. You've felt the temptation to tolerate disrespect just to avoid another empty night. You've watched others water down their principles to keep temporary company. But I'm here to remind you, a man who knows who he is will not trade peace for pleasure. He will not abandon his purpose to chase acceptance. Because he understands that whatever he compromises to get, he will have to compromise to keep. There is a generation rising that's drowning in options but starving for alignment. We're flooded with potential partners, flooded with opinions, flooded with preferences, but very few standards. Very few voices that say, this is who I am. This is what I will not tolerate. This is the soil I'm planted in, and if you cannot thrive here, I bless you as you go. And that voice, that rootedness, that's where your strength becomes irresistible. Not just admired, but needed. Because deep down, even the ones who test your boundaries are searching for them. Even the ones who push against your frame are trying to see if you can hold the weight of who they really are. But here's the warning. You cannot offer what you have not built. You cannot lead her into stability if you yourself are unstable. You cannot demand honor if you live without integrity. Your values are not just for show. They are for structure. And the man without structure cannot be trusted with anything sacred. Not a home. Not a woman. Not a legacy. This is why the refining hurts. This is why God allows the delays, the denials, the detours. Because He's not just preparing a blessing for you. He's preparing you for the blessing. And the version of you that keeps tolerating what you're called to transform cannot walk in the fullness of what's been promised. So the standards must be sharpened. The lines must be drawn. Not in arrogance, but in obedience. Not out of fear, but out of alignment. There's a moment in every man's journey where he must decide, will I become what the world wants, or will I become who I was born to be? Will I live for the applause of the temporary, or the approval of the eternal? Because you can't have both. And the man who tries to be everything to everyone will eventually become nothing to himself. But the man who roots himself, the man who plants himself by the rivers of truth and refuses to be moved, he becomes a shelter for others. He becomes a safe place, a sacred space, not perfect but present, not performative but prophetic, a living boundary line that says, if you enter this life, understand, this is holy ground. And if you've ever wondered why your presence feels heavy, why some people feel exposed when you enter the room, why others are drawn to you without even knowing why, it's not because of how you look. It's because of what you carry. You carry standards, and that carries weight. So don't shrink. Don't lower the bar to be more available. You were never meant to be accessible to everyone. You're a fortress. And those who are meant to dwell in your presence will not climb in through the window. They'll come through the door, with honor in their steps and reverence in their hearts. Because when your values are rooted, your presence is no longer a favor, it becomes a foundation.